So before we head into week 9 of college football, we've got some big things from week 8 to address. Like, are the playoffs out of reach for the Crimson Tide? And is there anything Oregon can do to, well, not be in the playoffs? Plus, we learned that, well, if you don't like an official's call, just throw your beer bottles until you get your way. Oh, yeah, and things are changing in Oklahoma. But are they changing for the better? Strap in, because the breakdown starts now. Welcome back to the Midweek College Football Breakdown. I am your host, the AntMan, joined, as always, by the birthday boy, Brandon Stevens. Happy birthday, buddy. Officially, today, the oldest man on the podcast, at least for a few months.
Oh, 48.
I don't ever have to worry about that.
pretty good for 48, I'm not going to lie.
You don't look a day over 47, B.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
For real. Next to him, Coach Dalton Miller. And guys, like I mentioned in the tease there at the top, before we can move into, well, this weekend's matchup, we have several things that we have to address from week 8 of college football. And it seems like every week in conference play, we talk about what we've called trap games. And that may be all that's left for the Oregon Ducks. Oregon faces what will likely be their last ranked opponent before the Big Ten title, assuming that the Ducks win out. Either if you feel that Oregon needs to have like their head on a swivel as they head into this game against the 6-1 nationally ranked Illinois. Dalton, let's start with you, buddy.
I don't think so. And something that we can learn about Dan Lanning is he kind of has that Georgia, Alabama mentality of trap games don't bother him. They don't face him. He tries to get his team ready week by week. They know what's ahead of them. He's got a veteran. I mean, if their definition of veteran quarterback is Dylan Gabriel, right? So he's got that quarterback who knows how to prepare, who knows how to get his offense ready. And I just think Oregon's too good. They just prepare well. They're focused. We thought early in the year, what's going on with this defense, right? Like, they're allowing a lot of points. Offense is struggling. They're getting a lot of yards, not getting in the end zone. I think it was just a brand new team, needed to figure out how to play well together, and they got that one signature win over Ohio State. Illinois is a good team, but they're mid-tier for the Big Ten. I think that Oregon's going to handle business because they are preparing. They know they can't win the Big Ten next week. They got to beat Illinois next week, and so that's what they're planning to do.
Big question for you. You've said it before that the Heisman seems to be the best quarterback award now, not necessarily the best overall player. However, sometimes you can be both. Where does Dylan Gabriel currently stand in the Heisman race for you right now?
I mean, right now, in my opinion, I think he's at the top. I think Dylan Gabriel is number one in the Heisman balloting right now. I think if the award were to come out today, it would be Dylan Gabriel's award. I think Cam Ward and Ashton Jeanty are both like 1B and 1C. I mean, they're both right there. Ashton Jeanty is amazing. I mean, he's so good right now. He's going to probably break Barry Sanders' yards per game record. Right. And I mean, to me, Barry Sanders, in my opinion, is the best running back to ever play football. Like I've always said, if Barry Sanders ran behind Emmitt Smith's offensive line, he'd have been the first NFL quarterback to run for 3,000 yards in a season. Like, he is that good. And Ashton Jeanty is about to beat his record that he had when he was at Oklahoma State. I think Dylan Gabriel's at the top. It is a quarterback award. And if Dylan Gabriel or Cam Ward, neither one, lose a game going into, conference championship weekend, I think you're going to see one of them win it, even if Ashton Jeanty breaks the award, which if Ashton Jeanty breaks the record, I mean, I might say you need to put him up there, but the caliber of opponent they play is nothing like what Dylan Gabriel plays. And I say I mean Ashton Jeanty and Cam Ward. Like, Cam Ward's playing in the ACC. The only other good team in the ACC that's any good at all, in my opinion, is Clemson. So Boise has an interesting game coming up with UNLV this weekend, who's 6-1. But saying that, I think Dylan Gabriel's right there at the top.
Well, and all three of us Oklahoma fans, and we see on all of our Oklahoma, especially Facebook pages, of the regret of allowing Dylan Gabriel to leave Oklahoma, especially seeing what has happened this year. We'll get into some Oklahoma talk coming up here in just a little bit. Let's move over to Bama and Tennessee. You know, the battle for the cigar box. So Tennessee intercepts Jalen Milroe on their attempted game-winning drive to give the Tide their second loss of the season. They say, you know, if you keep winning, you'll find yourself in the playoff, but there has to be a cutoff point. Is that dream over for the Tide at this point, Brandon? I'm going to start with you on this one.
I mean, I don't think it's over. I've said all year, I think the SEC gets 4 teams in. I don't think Alabama can have, you know, another misstep in this process. I think Alabama has to come to play every week. And if I'm not mistaken, they play Kentucky this week, right? And Kentucky has had some battles this year. I don't think they can have another misstep. I think if they get to that 3-loss tier, especially after losing to
Missouri.
Oh no, you're right. They do play Missouri.
Okay.
I think if Bama loses another game, they're right on the cusp of not being in, because I mean, if you think about it, you got Georgia, Tennessee, Bama. Right now, Texas A&M is up there. LSU. You got all these teams that are in. Tennessee. I didn't even say Tennessee. You got these 6 teams that are really in right now that are playing really good. All 6 of them are not getting in. So I think you have to be really careful, and they don't all play everybody in the SEC because there's so many teams. I don't think they're out now, but I don't think they can have another loss in the regular season and still be in.
We're really going to see, I think, what A&M's made of after this weekend. If they can win this home game against LSU, I think we need to start talking about maybe A&M a little bit in that playoff race here. The Vols get a little reset of sorts going into their second bye week at what seems to be a pretty optimal time. What would you say is the most important thing for the Volunteers to do moving into the back end of their season here, Dalton?
They have to go week by week, kind of like what we talked about Oregon. They cannot look ahead to anybody. They get a very struggling Kentucky team after the bye week. They've got a not great Mississippi State team, but Mississippi State finding the new quarterback in Van Buren, who's playing really well right now, putting up numbers in some losses, but Mississippi State's going to find a way to upset a team, in my opinion, just because of the change they've had in offense. But I'm worried Tennessee might look forward to that Georgia game. They've got 4 weeks before it with the bye week, or 3 weeks, bye week and then 2 games. That's the whole thing, is they can't look ahead to Georgia. They can't beat Georgia during the bye week. They can't beat Georgia in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks. And so Tennessee, that game right there is going to determine, in my opinion, whether or not they're fighting. If they go in and play Georgia and Georgia dominates them, in my opinion, the way that Georgia dominated Texas, it's going to be out for Tennessee. That's kind of the way I look at it for them, because like he said, there's I think seven teams right now you could look at that are fighting for 4 spots from the SEC. And so slip-ups aren't really a thing right now for the SEC teams. Like, losing a game is okay. You're going to lose. You're not going to win them all. But you can't get dominated. You can't drop a game you're not supposed to drop. Yeah. And so, I just think Tennessee's got to continue to go one game at a time. And then knowing the bye week, no, they're not dealing with injuries necessarily the way that we talk about injuries at Oklahoma, but every team's injured at this point in the season. Every team's got bang-ups. Every team's got bumps and bruises. They've got to use this week to get healthy and make sure that they get their top guys ready to play. I think Tennessee's a very good football team. They're scraping by right now. I don't think Alabama's the same team that we've seen Alabama be in the past years. And so that was a good win, a great win in my opinion, but B, you got something?
Yeah, I think Tennessee needs to concentrate on getting their offense back on track. Early in the year, their offense was explosive and completely dominating in games. And I know they just beat Alabama, and that's a huge deal. But Alabama's not the team that we've seen in the past. So Alabama is not Alabama, right? Alabama has fallen a little bit, and we've seen that this year. So I think they really need to worry about getting their offense really back on track and functioning at the level that it was functioning for in the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season, and not these last 3 or 4 weeks.
And that really comes on Iamaleava. They had 3 turnovers total against Alabama. They still put up a ton of yards, rushed for 214 yards, had 408 total yards, but throwing 2 interceptions and finding a way to win a game is bizarre. They can't continue to do that. You throw 2 picks against Georgia, you're not going to win.
Yeah, since the OU game, their offense has really except for this past week against a somewhat tough Alabama defense, since the OU game, that Tennessee offense just really hasn't been what we saw early in the season. So I just think they need to worry about getting their offense on track, everybody getting on the same page, moving forward with, high level progression and not just staying standard to what they've been.
It's like once they started throwing him into the Heisman race, his quarterback play just dropped.
Yeah,
like,
right.
He was no longer the same quarterback. And part of that was probably a little bit of an overhype.
I agree. He's a freshman.
Yeah.
Maybe too early to have that conversation for that guy. Give him a whole season at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let him get through the SEC. I mean, I think that people blew up the fact that you beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And it's like,
before they knew who Oklahoma was.
Right. You did not beat a great team. I mean, when you turn the ball over inside your 10-yard line and you can't score, like, all right, you should win that game. Like Tennessee, you should win that game. And the fact that you only won 24-10, maybe there is more questions about how good you are than how, I just think that they really can't go. They have to go week by week. And I don't think Tennessee can afford a loss.
They need to keep the turnovers to a minimum and just get their offense back on track.
We love hanging out with you guys every midweek. If you are listening right now, thank you. We appreciate that. And wherever that is, if you'll share it with a friend, that would help us a lot. And even if you want to give it a rating, that would help too. If you are watching us on YouTube, very simple. Hit the like button, the little thumbs up, that one, and also the subscribe button. Both of those things are free for you to do, and they help us tremendously. We were just talking about taking some of these live sometime and chatting with some of y'all. So we'd love to do that, but we need you to tell a friend about it first and help us build that up and get this channel rolling. And we'd love to hang out with you live here on the podcast too. So wherever you're taking this in, appreciate you sharing where that is with your friends. If it's on social media, thanks for doing that. And thanks for being here for the Midweek College Football Breakdown. All right, it's time to get your water bottles ready, or your beer bottles, maybe that is.
Someone has shown their displeasure in a stupid way by throwing a beer can on the field. That's an enormous call, and I don't know about that at all.
I don't either. Sark doesn't usually get that animated, but man, this is a huge call. Contact both ways. Both guys looking at the football. The entire
the students are now raining bottles down. And this is unfortunate. And this is going to delay the game. That's the student section down there in the corner. They're not going to win the Taco Bell contest at this rate.
No.
But I tell you, look, these guys have a tough job, especially on these plays on the edge. But calls like that can influence outcomes. Sarkisian down there pleading with them to stop doing that. There are hundreds of water bottles in that end zone.
Indeed, me and a board op for a sports station in Oklahoma City got into it over this incident on X on Saturday night. It's a terrible precedent to set with making calls, reversing calls, or even no calls because of a stadium's response to something that did or didn't happen on the field. Boo, cuss, scream all you want, clap at them if you'd like, but a great call by SEC for finding Texas for this incident. B, take us through the initial call from when it very first happened to the end of that, and we finally got back to play, and your feelings on all of this as you were watching it live in the moment.
So I'm going to have to say, and it almost pains me to say this, but I'm going to have to say my opinion has changed a little bit about the call the more I've watched it, because the defensive guy is allowed to have the position he was in. The offensive guy ran through him. So maybe it should have been called interference. You know what? How many bad calls do we see every game, right? I'm watching the game, and at first I was mad because the interception was thrown. They ran it back to the 7-yard line. I was like, what are you doing? And then I saw the flag, and then the reign of terror comes down from the stands, right? They had already placed the ball back ready for play after they called the penalty. They had placed the ball ready for play. That's when the students are going crazy, throw the beer cans back on the field, or throw the beer cans onto the field. Yeah. And it's a 3, 4, 5 minute stall of the game
And they're just showing the foul over and over and over again. On the big
right. It gives the officials time to look at the Jumbotron.
And not to mention 9 seconds went off the play clock, or the play clock. 9 seconds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they set the ball ready for play. It's next play. Like this is over. You can't review penalties in college football. You can't review pass interference in college football like you can in the NFL. In the NFL, it can be reviewed. You can challenge it. No, that wasn't pass interference. We're reversing the call. You can't reverse a penalty in college football. 0 of them can be reversed. They have all the extra time and they reverse the penalty. If they hadn't seen it on the Jumbotron, 14 times in 5 minutes, do they overturn that? No. You don't overturn penalties in college football. I'm shocked that the NCAA hasn't come out and said something about it. They really haven't come out and said, this was the right decision or the wrong decision either way. And I was angry as I was pissed off. What pisses Brandon off? I was pissed off, right? It's ridiculous. Joe Castiglione Jr., son of the athletic director at OU. Did you see his post on Twitter? He was like, "Oh, so throwing beer cans on the field works?"
It works, evidently.
There's the precedent that was set, and it's not even going to combine or contract itself just to college football.
Yeah,
because
you're exactly right.
Everybody was watching that game. It's going to be NBA. It's going to be Major League Baseball. It's going to be NFL. It's going to be soccer. It's going to be softball, baseball, whatever. They've set a precedent now and they let it happen. They did fine the University of Texas for it, but at the same time, all those Texas fans are like, it worked. And that's what everybody else sees.
My question in this whole thing is if the point was, which was the argument I was having on X during the timeout, or maybe after that, was the point was that the guy was making was that it was holding to the integrity of the game by getting the call right and making it right, that it wasn't actually a foul. Say what you will about it. That's not the point. If you're trying to do it right, great. You change the call. Now what about the unsportsmanlike conduct or delay of game that you should have been on Texas for what the student section did by throwing their stuff on the field? You didn't call that one. So if your point is to hold up the integrity of the game and to hold to getting the call right, that one's missed. Nothing was done about that during the game. I just find it fascinating when there's a whole group, especially on social media, who have this tendency to read into conspiracy theories about who the refs are for anyway. And you do stuff like this, all you do is play into that. All you do is feed into that mentality when you're doing sketchy things like this. If you saw it in the moment, now you say that you can't change you can't change a penalty. I have seen times where you see a flag and you see a huddle. You never hear them make a call. They just go over and pick up the flag and say, "There's no flag on the play."
Right, but that's
not what happened.
They had a huddle, and they stuck with the call. They set the ball for play with the 15-yard penalty in Georgia's advantage, set the ball for play, and then the reign of terror comes from the stands, and then they get to watch it on the Jumbotron, and they change it again.
We get to hear what Kirby thought of everything here as well.
Battles, how do you know how to get the best out of your players when you need it most?
These players get the best out of me. And I'm so proud of these guys because nobody believed. Nobody gave us a chance. Your whole network doubted us. Nobody believed us. And then they tried to rob us with calls in this place. And these guys are so resilient. You know what I mean? We talked about intent. What was our intent when we walked on the field? Our intent was not to take pictures, not to do all the superstar stuff. Our intent was to eat. Our intent was to come eat and be hungry. I'm not interested in all the bells and whistles. What I want is a team that fights their ass off, and they did tonight.
Indeed, they did. Georgia
Smart.
didn't need a chip on their shoulder to be dominant, but they sure got one thanks to the national media. What did this defense do to make Texas look like a completely different offense from their first 6 games, Dalton?
Their pass rush is incredible, and Kirby, the dude is relentless when it comes to defense, and he's everything that Uncle and I have talked about over and over and over again. A short down yardage, long down yardage, it doesn't matter. Get after the quarterback. And, I wouldn't be surprised if they watched a little film on Quinn Ewers early in the OU game and was like, this dude, even when he doesn't have pressure, looks scared out of his mind. Looks like he doesn't want to step into throws. Looks like he doesn't want to make the right reads. He's just panicking in some ways. Look at the interception he threw against Oklahoma early. That was just a bad throw. We got lucky. That was
because there was pressure in his face.
And so Georgia just absolutely relentless. That defense that we saw reminded me of the 2 best years of college football defenses we'd seen from a Georgia defense, dating back to not last year, but the 2 years prior to that. That was the big thing, because and it didn't change. Even when they subbed out Quinn Ewers and they brought in Arch Manning. Yeah, Arch Manning made one big run, used his legs a little bit, stepped up in the pocket and found a lane. Good job. Georgia didn't panic. They didn't change up what they did. They went after him again, force him into a fumble, get the ball back. I mean, Georgia was very relentless on defense, and I'll say it over and over again. I personally did not mind that Kirby Smart came out and kicked the onside kick. I know that could be called controversial. I also think that he probably, in his locker room with his team, he probably asked him. He probably said, hey, we could do this right now. Offense, if we don't get it. Defense, are you up to the challenge?
Right.
I think that they were in that place. It was very hostile. I mean, regardless of the beer cans, Texas, you put out one heck of an environment. You really did. It was loud. It was hostile. And I think that they were up to that battle. Texas scored on that drive, right? So that changed some things. Momentum shifted, and it looks like, okay, then 4th and 1, own territory. He's like, let's go for it. Put his defense up to the test again. Only this time they pass. Late in the game, ball's in their territory. Texas now has a chance.
Yep.
Texas defense does their job. I think Texas defense, the fact that you stay aggressive wins football games. They say it. Defense wins championships. You're not going to do it if you're not aggressive. And just some of the stunts, I mean, you guys have seen the videos. Some of the stunts that they ran against Texas had Quinn Ewers so confused. I mean, they would bring 7, and you would not know which gap these linebackers were coming through. Loved what Georgia did. They dominated all night long. How does Carson Beck throw 3 interceptions and no touchdowns, and it still seems like for 3/4 of the game, Texas is not in the game?
I know.
Georgia dominated that game and probably could have won by 4 touchdowns.
Well, and I was going to make that point too, was the fact that there were 3 interceptions, 4 turnovers total, right? Or is it still just the 3? I thought there were 4 turnovers, 3 interceptions. Either way, that's still a lot, and by most standards would lose you the game. That's how much better Georgia is than Texas. But actually, my question was going to be for you. Do you feel like Texas is a fraud, or are they still on a path to the playoffs right now?
Man, I think they still have a path to the playoffs.
You think they're that good?
Their schedule's weak.
They don't play anybody the rest of the year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the deal. And you're not going to turn down an 11-1 team from the SEC getting into the playoffs.
Yeah,
it's not going to happen. You're 11-1. You're in the SEC. You're in the playoffs, period. They don't even have to go to the championship game.
Yep.
They don't have to go to the championship game. You're 11-1 in the SEC. You're in the playoffs. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say the same thing about Texas, though. Hang on. I'm going to say the same thing about Texas as I said about Alabama. I'm not sure, and Alabama already has 2 losses, and I said this if they get their 3rd one. I'm not sure if Texas screws up and loses to Vandy or screws up and loses to, another team that shouldn't beat them, obviously. They're going to be on that bubble, I think. I think they have a path to the playoff. I think they probably win the rest of their games, but Georgia, Oklahoma did it in the first couple of possessions. Georgia did it this week. Get pressure on Quinn Ewers, and you're going to see some good things for your defense.
Yeah, that's so true. And let's talk about quarterbacks real quick. Dalton, especially UT's quarterback. We saw this post from 24/7 Sports, but only for a moment before it was removed. Possibly a hack, some are saying, but do you think it's possible that we see a QB change in Austin anytime soon?
I do. I can't sit here and tell you it's not possible. Quinn Ewers benched him in the Georgia game, and if Arch Manning doesn't turn the ball over, he doesn't go back to Quinn Ewers. That's the whole thing, in my opinion. And then I thought Quinn Ewers' response after the game and his interviews was very interesting when they asked him, do you feel like you needed to be benched? And he just had a very kind of sigh and said, shook his shoulders, I guess so. And that made me think, okay, I don't think he was necessarily on the same page with that. I don't think he felt like he needed to. And made me kind of wonder, did he enjoy, I can't imagine he's enjoyed having Arch Manning sit behind him this entire year and then getting hurt and watching Arch Manning absolutely dominate. And then everybody you heard the roar of the crowd. Texas absolutely wanted Arch Manning in that game. And so it just has to be hard to come back from. And the whole thing with Quinn is, right now, I don't think he's playing confident. And that's why I'm going to say that I don't think that it's out of the question at some point for them to say, all right, we got to go with Arch, because even if they can find a way to beat Vanderbilt in a struggle game, even if they can find a way to go on the road to Arkansas, they got to go on the road at the very end of the season to Texas A&M. Yep. They still have a path to the playoff. And I could see it coming down to that last week with Texas A&M, and Arch knows what's at stake when you're at the University of Texas. Sark knows what's at stake. And so that's why I think that it's on the table for Arch to at some point take over the quarterback play for the rest of the season, because I don't think Ewers is living up to what he was supposed to.
Well, and I also think it's interesting that as we looked at Texas' schedule at the beginning of the season, it was an easier schedule until we saw the teams that they have to play and beat teams that they weren't supposed to beat. And especially the Vandy games this weekend, right? Isn't it Texas Vandy this weekend?
It is, yeah. They go on the road too. So I'm hoping we see some more field goal posts in the river.
Going against a team that has just incredible momentum for whatever reason. Well, the reason being that they win or have been winning, which is typically unusual for Vandy. I mean, we made fun of them at the beginning of the year on this podcast. We talked about it.
They've only won 2 games in a row in the SEC, 3 times or twice in the last 10 years.
Right.
I was a little nervous when I saw the Ball State score at halftime, but we're just going to chalk it up to they were looking past Ball State because they were getting ready for Texas. They were just looking past Ball State.
No doubt.
Let's get to some Crimson and Cream news. Here we go.
As I said on my radio show last night, we made a decision to make a change at offensive coordinator and step Coach Finley along with Kevin Johns into new roles, working together. Coach Johns to coach our quarterbacks, and Coach Finley and the rest of the staff, Kevin included, putting together game plans, and we'll call it on game days. Incredibly hard decision on many levels, and then a 10,000-foot lens, not so difficult. We're not playing winning football on that side of the ball, and thought a change would be appropriate, and change in leadership, a new voice, a new perspective, a new lens, strategy, game planning, sequencing, all of those things that go along with that position. As I said last night, this is not everything, all the blood doesn't fall at the hands of Coach Luttrell. There's lots of different issues that have been problems for the lack of consistency, lack of offensive output, and but ultimately that goes along with that position.
It was only a week after Brent made a statement that he's never been a part of a mid-season coaching change. We see that right there. B, did you see this as a necessary change in the moment? And how much do you believe it was, let's just say, highly encouraged?
Oh, I mean, I think it was a necessary. I think it was necessary after the Tennessee game. I mean, we saw the ineptitude of our offense. We saw how they weren't able to move the ball against a decent defense. I mean, and we honestly saw it before that in our non-conference games before that. I don't think this was all Brent's decision. I think honestly, there was pressure put on him, and it came from the top and not necessarily just from him. I think he sees it. I don't think he disagreed with it. I mean, he just said, you mentioned it earlier, he just said last week, I've never been part of a program that let a coach go in the midseason. And then the next week, our offense looks like it did against South Carolina. Absolutely inept. Like, those guys didn't look like they knew what was coming. They didn't look like they had prepared at all. It honestly looked like my old, when I was in high school, I don't know if you ever went to this, Ant, but when I was in high school, we would go to the Mustang football field on Sunday afternoons and play football. And it honestly looked like that. Okay, we're drawing plays on our chest. Okay, you go this way, you go this way. I kind of felt like that was. It definitely needed to be done. It's needed to be done for several weeks. And I think he got pressure from the top. I sit in the brain trust. For those of you that don't know what the brain trust is, it's me, Ant, Dalton, and a couple of our other friends that are all in this OU football chat. And so we chat all week long. We text all week long. And in the brain trust, I can't remember who posted it, but somebody posted on Twitter that, putting Joe John Finley in to call the plays when he was the co-offensive coordinator, it's kind of like pooping your pants and changing your shirt. Like, I don't know where we go next with it. Yeah. I kind of would have rather seen Kevin Johns get the play calling duties. Kevin Johns was really good when he was at Memphis. At Memphis, he had like the 20th ranked offense in the country 3 or 4 years ago. Then he went to Duke, had some really good success at Duke. Duke's head coach then ends up getting hired, Elko, moving to Texas A&M. Yep. So that offense looked good enough for him to be promoted from Duke to Texas A&M, which is a big time move for him.
Big bump in pay too.
Yeah, definitely a big bump in pay because those guys are crazy. But I mean, I think it needed to happen. I don't really know what's next. I mean, Joe John Finley is not going to be our offense coordinator next year.
Okay.
I mean, we're going to do a national search, and honestly, at this point, I think BV's reputation is on the line. At this point, BV's job at Oklahoma is on the line next year. I think he's already on the hot seat, and we're moving into next year. I mean, our offense has been horrible. We're 128th out of 134 teams in total offense. Yep. 107th in scoring offense, 114th in rushing offense, 116th in passing offense. I mean, literally, our scoring offense is our best quality of our offense, and we're ranked 107th in the country. Somebody on the radio this week said this is statistically the worst offense Oklahoma's had. I think they said since 1964. Think about that. None of us were born then, and I'm old. Obviously, I turned 48 today. I'm old, right? But I was born in 76.
Yeah.
That was still 12 years before I was born.
Right.
The worst offense that Oklahoma has had statistically since 1964. Ridiculous.
Well, and you mentioned both of their names, Joe John and Kevin Johns. They're now the co-offensive coordinator with Joe John calling the plays. At least that's what Brent is saying right now. I think that switch to Kevin Johns would be much easier. You may say something, maybe you don't, maybe you split it up. You give a series to one guy and another guy takes a different series. I don't know how. I just think that you can't change everybody all at once in the middle of the season. You can get rid of one, but man, how crazy would that look if of course, if Seth Luttrell goes and Joe John go at the same time, and then we have people hurt. And it's kind of like the ice cream machine at McDonald's. it's hard to pinpoint why it doesn't work right now, because there's so much wrong with it. And Dalton, let me ask you this: B saying that neither one of these guys are really the long-term solution. So how wide do you cast that net to find the solution going into 2025?
I think at this level, especially, he's already got a short list. I think that most of the time, coaches at that level have a list of people in their back pocket because you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. There's been a lot of names thrown around, and a lot of lists I've seen have some similarities in them. The Indiana offensive coordinator, UNLV offensive coordinator. I've seen Dan Mullen's name thrown around quite a bit.
I like that one.
There's a lot of similarities and a lot of lists, but at the end of the day, you have to hire somebody is going to be aggressive. You have to hire somebody is going to be able to put guys in spots to be successful. And I'm not going to. I don't want to throw Kevin Johns into the mix and say that he's not part of the future. He may not be the offensive coordinator next year, but that doesn't mean he's not going to be around and helping out. Joe John, he shouldn't be part of the future. And I want to say one of the points I wanted to make tonight, I don't always agree with everything Zach Sanchez has to say. I don't agree with all of his takes and all of his points. But I 100% agree with him on get rid of your emotions when it comes to the coaching staff in college football. It's a business. And even before the NIL, the coaching side of things has always been a business. It's nothing personal against Seth Luttrell. And I think some people are like, oh, I can't believe you just let go of a guy. Seriously, some of the fans I've seen on Twitter for these Twitter likes trying to defend Seth Luttrell and everything. I'm like, you know what? Then somebody has to take accountability for it, because I agree 100% with Unc. The change should have happened after Tennessee, because the season's over. Season's over, and we only lost to Tennessee by 10 points, a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, and we couldn't find an offense. And we thought that maybe the change in quarterback would work. And I think all of us wanted to buy into that. But the fact is, the change didn't happen at the right spot. I'm over the excuses. Our offensive line is atrocious. Yeah. And at some point, Bedenbaugh needs to take some accountability for that. At some point,
100%.
He has to. But also, the offensive coordinator did not make any type of adjustment, didn't make any type of changes. He continued to put our tight ends in horrible spots. Brutal. It had to happen. I think the net is cast as wide as Brent wants to, but I think, as B said, he knows his job is on the line, because at this level, at this stage, at the University of Oklahoma, the expectation is you win, regardless whether it's Big 12 or SEC. The expectation is you win.
It is.
As the offensive coordinator at OU, you do have big shoes to fill. I mean, I get it. Like, 3 of our quarterbacks in the recent year have been in the top 4 have been in the top 3 or 4 for the Heisman. Listen, I get it. It's a new day and age in the SEC. You don't have to have in the SEC an offense that's going to score 65 points a game, which is what we've been used to. But at the same time, once things start going downhill, why do you not go to your impact players, your quarterbacks, your wide receivers, your running backs, and say, what do you do well? Like you look at it and say, what are we doing well? And what would be in your wheelhouse? And then you cater things to that. I feel like Seth Luttrell just was like, no, this is what we're going to do. And Dalton, you mentioned this earlier today when I was talking to you on the phone. We've said several times that we don't know that we felt like the offensive coordinator was getting a fair shake because we thought Brent Venables was too involved. At this point, you said it. I didn't say it. You said it. You were like, I'm wondering if he's been involved enough. This was the first time on this game last week against South Carolina was the first time we've seen him, really in the offense on the sideline. He had the iPad. He had everything he was going through. Like, he knows at this point, things are snowballing and rolling downhill. We've got to do something to make a change. He made the change. The net, like you said, is going to be cast as far as he wants to cast it. And I mean, there are some names, there are some dream names that I would love to go get, I would love to go get Joe Brady. I would love to go get Cliff Kingsbury. I'm not sure either one of those guys are leaving the NFL. I'm not the question asker on this podcast. Anthony normally is, but I'm gonna ask you guys this. There's a guy out west that's probably losing a job.
Absolutely.
There's a guy out west that's probably not going to be at that school this year.
Yep.
In Lincoln Riley, or next year in Lincoln Riley. I mean, if you saw his press conference, they were like, "Why is your offense not able to, sustain throughout the whole game? You can't win." He goes, "I don't know." That's all he would answer. He's losing that job at USC after this year.
He's gone.
Now, the big rumors are he's going to the NFL. There's a lot of that talk. He's going to go be an OC in the NFL. He doesn't have to recruit. He doesn't have to do that stuff. Yeah. But, I mean, I hate the dude.
It's a business.
Unless he comes back and saves our offense, then I love him again.
It's a business. Honestly,
is he Dalton? Is he on your list?
My list, yes.
There was an article written in the Daily Oklahoman today, or the Oklahoman as it's called, talking about somewhat of a match made in heaven.
We'll see.
We have one of the best defensive minds in the country as our head coach. We get one of the best offensive minds in the country as our OC. Is he willing to take an OC job at this point in college football? I don't know. But as much as I can't stand Lincoln Riley right now, and as much as he pissed me off, another thing that pisses Brandon off, Lincoln Riley, as much as he pisses me off, I would get down on my hands and knees and beg him to come back if I thought it worked.
I would love to have him come back because people talking about how he didn't recruit. Okay, the one quarterback he didn't recruit here was Baker Mayfield. He got Kyler Murray. He got Jalen Hurts.
Yep.
He got Caleb Williams.
Yep.
Like, he can recruit. I think he
got Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler's starting in the NFL. He got Spencer Rattler.
I think that he's found that it is a lot harder to recruit to LA than he thought it would be.
His $10 million and free use of a jet isn't what he thought it was going to be.
Yeah, 100%. He's on my list, and I know I'm one of the few Oklahoma fans. But to all those Oklahoma fans, and again, this is different right now because the Oklahoma City Thunder are good again. It's the same thing. I would have absolutely said, arms wide open, Kevin Durant, come back home. Now I wouldn't now because Oklahoma City's good, but it's a business through and through, and you want to win. You want to be good. You want to get the best players. And he found a way to get the best out of other people too. I know that we talked about our run game and Bill Bedenbaugh. Like, it struggled a little bit early under Lincoln Riley, but it continued to get good. And our backs were always really good under Lincoln Riley. I mean, our run game was good. It was patient. It was creative. And so, yeah, no, I would. And another name that I'm not also opposed is Garrett Riley, his brother out at Clemson. I'm not opposed to him either. He's coached in a national title game. He's got a lot of the same mind that Lincoln Riley has. I wouldn't mind that either.
He's got connections with Brent Venables.
Yes, he does.
Clemson. My favorite part of game day is not the picks at the end. My favorite part of game day every single week are the stories told. Imagine the story of the prodigal son that leaves.
That's exactly what it would be. The prodigal son returns home.
And then comes back going, could I just coach the backs? No, you can actually be the offensive coordinator. How would you like to do that? I think that would be an incredible story. There is some good news in what has been an abysmal season for Oklahoma. It seems that Deion Burks, Jalil Farouk, Andrell Anthony, and Nick Anderson all may have intentions to actually return next season, which is, a couple of those guys we talked about, like, they're done. They're going to the pros. It's judging from coach, it seems like that actually could be if they go get healthy. I mean, they said they want to come back some this season. How about not? Like, listen, the season's the season. Go get healthy and come back and whoop some A next year. That would be really cool.
That's going to make the difference. Like, if they decide they come back and play it all this year, and they burn some of those red shirts or whatever, then some of them may not be able to come back next year.
Yeah.
You can still get the injury hardship for the hardship red shirt, but if they all came back next year and we kind of got some things in line, I'd be super joyous. Happy dance.
Happy dance. Let's jump over the picks. Last week's picks. This is how it looked. Both picked BYU over OSU, and you guys lost that. BU took Oregon minus 27.5 versus Purdue, and you got that one. 1 point. Dalton, LSU minus 2.5 over Arkansas. You got that one. Your master lock, Tennessee +3 over Bama. You get 4 points on that one, and so you both got your master locks. Dalton, Illinois +3 over Michigan. So that leaves it a tie again this time, because you actually won some of them. But you lead 25-23. It's time to go to this week's picks. The ball is in your court, Dalton. You get to go first. All yours, bud.
Man, I'm going to start out with a Thursday night game this week. We got the ACC, 6:30 on ESPN. We got Pitt, who is ranked and undefeated right now in the ACC, still trying to battle for that conference title spot. And then you got Syracuse, only one loss. That one loss, interesting to me. I can't really decide how good Syracuse is, because they've got a win over UNLV, who is really good, in overtime, but they also played UNLV after the debacle with their quarterback deciding, I don't want to play anymore, type of thing. So I'm going to rock with Pitt, and a big reason I'm going to do this is because they're at home. I think you don't always see Pitt fighting for a conference title in the ACC, and winning is a big deal. They've tasted a lot of wins so far this year. They're on the back end of their season. They're only favored by 6, which means all they got to do is win by a touchdown at home against Syracuse, who I think is just a very average football team. So give me Pitt to start the week off, -6.
All right. You're going with a Thursday night game. I'm going with a Friday night game. And I'm going to Las Vegas. You got Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, Maddox Maxson going in to UNLV. Boise State, 5-1, 2-0 in conference. UNLV, 6-1, 2-0 in conference. This has big conference implications. I don't think anyone can stop Ashton Jeanty. I mean, he's 6 games into the season, and he's already rushed for 1,248 yards and 17 touchdowns. UNLV is a good team. Williams took over for the once departed quarterback that got mad about NIL stuff for UNLV, and has been pretty good. He does have one loss in that, but he's been pretty good. I just don't think anybody can stop Ashton Jeanty. I don't think UNLV's defense is good enough to stop him. I think they're going to roll in this game. They're only a 2.5 point favorite on the road at UNLV. I think they probably win by, 10, maybe 14 points. So I'm going to take Boise State minus the 2.5 at UNLV.
Good pick. I didn't want to touch that game. I thought it would be a shootout,
because it's a winner.
Well, I hope not.
Well, then you would have picked the same game again. So
yeah, that would have been fun.
Exactly.
Right? I need you to lose. I need to win. That's the only way I'm going to get points back. So, hey, look, Vanderbilt is ranked, fellas.
Yep.
They are in the top 25. It took Missouri 2 overtimes to beat them, and they got Bama. They got Kentucky. They looked past Ball State because they knew they had Texas on the schedule. Texas is headed to Nashville. Nothing tells me that Texas is 19 points better than Vanderbilt right now. I'm not saying Vanderbilt's going to win, although I think it is a possibility. I'm not taking it off the table. Pavia's only turned the ball over 1 time this season. He's smart.
I love Diego Pavia.
He's also their leading rusher. Give me Vanderbilt. Because I know that Vanderbilt is going to be aggressive. They have not, even though they're ranked, they still have nothing to lose. They're Vanderbilt. I don't know that they're fighting for an SEC title. I don't think they're fighting for a playoff. So they have nothing to lose. They want to get the best bowl game possible. They want to continue to knock as many people off. They're going to go after Quinn Ewers. There's no way they don't. Give me Vanderbilt plus 18.5.
All right. Well, I'm taking my second pick, all the way to Madison, Wisconsin. Penn State on the road at Wisconsin, favored by 6.5. Man, something's going on with Penn State this year. You know, I said this last week. As much crap as I've talked about Drew Aller in the previous couple of years, he has really stepped up this year. The new change at offensive coordinator has really made a difference for their offense. They are scoring the ball. They are holding teams to very little success on offense. I mean, the last 3 games for Wisconsin, they've beat NIU, Rutgers, and Purdue. But their previous 2, they lost to USC and obviously the Alabama game that Wisconsin had. Penn State, 6-0, undefeated, 3-0. I mean, number 3 ranked team in the country right now. I'm taking Penn State minus the 6.5. It's not in Happy Valley. I know it's on the road, but I think Penn State's going to go and win this game. And Penn State minus 6.5 all day long on Saturday.
Time for some master locks.
Yeah. Man, got to rock with my dad on this one. I got to go to the Navy. They've got Notre Dame.
I had a feeling you were going to pick this one.
They got Notre Dame. Here's the deal. Navy's averaging 44 points per game this year. Notre Dame's only averaging 34. Navy's quarterback, Horvath, he's only thrown for 888 yards on the season, but the style of offense that they run is so hard to defend because you don't see it week in and week out. He's also their leading rusher. I think Notre Dame, as always, I will never not think this, is a fraud. They've got one loss to a horrible football team. Sorry, Chief.
Sorry, Chief.
I'm telling you, Navy is better than what people think. They're still undefeated, and they're probably still fighting for a playoff spot. It's going to come down to them in Boise State. I think that Navy's better than what people think. I think that Notre Dame is worse than what people think, and Notre Dame is favored in this point by 12.5. So give me Navy plus 12.5. Give me the dub. Let me double these points for the master lock.
I do like that pick. I almost picked that, but I knew you were going to pick it. I knew that's what you were going to pick. I'm going with an underdog too, though. I'm going to College Station. LSU comes into town. LSU just seems to be rolling right now. And actually, yeah, that's right. LSU just seems to be rolling right now. I mean, in their last 4 games, most they've given up was 26, and that was to an Ole Miss offense that is just prolific on the offensive side of the ball. They beat them in overtime. Texas A&M's been really good. Connor Wegman's been really good. Grant Nussmeier for LSU has been really good. Grant Nussmeier, 183 for 283 for 222 yards, or for 2,222 yards, 18 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. Great touchdown to interception ratio. I think LSU goes in and spoils the fun in College Station. I know I have a lot of friends. Sorry, Ira. I have a lot of friends that are big A&M fans, and I know several of them listen. So I'm taking LSU, though, plus 2.5 at A&M. Dalton, we may both get 6 points this week, and you're still going to be down by 2.
Well, I hope that doesn't happen. Hey, wasn't it you that told me to when I'm looking at this A&M game? Because I was shocked to see that LSU wasn't favored. But didn't you say that you get 3 points automatically for being the home team?
I mean, not necessarily. That's kind of the standard that people go by. Typically, the home team will get, somewhat of a 3-point advantage as long as they're a decent team. I mean, they're not given, Valparaiso 3 points for playing at home against Alabama.
Sure.
But in a game like this, typical thought process is 3 points for the home team just because of home field advantage. And Texas A&M has a big home field advantage. So it's going to be, it's going to be weird. LSU going in there. It's going to be a different atmosphere than some of these LSU guys have seen. Grant Nussmeier is doing fine. Grant Nussmeier is going to go in and take LSU to a victory in this game.
Speaking of Grant Nussmeier, I saw him pop up today. They were making fun of him for sliding into different girls' DMs because he was not smooth at all.
I mean,
you should get called out for that.
Hey, as long as he slides past the first down marker, if he's sliding into DMs, then whatever. Just don't slide a yard short.
The back to the home field advantage, getting 3 points. That would explain why Oklahoma was favored by 1 point against South Carolina.
Brutal.
Last week.
Ugh. I don't know. Makes me want to stab myself in the eye.
The biggest part of our game, I told this to Unc on the phone. The biggest part of this weekend is the coin toss. Can't lose the coin toss because we've got to be on defense to start the game against Ole Miss.
And what did I say? I said, you know what? If I'm the other team and I win the coin toss, I might just say we want to play defense first and not defer to the other side. Then OU gets the ball to start both halves. With their offense on the field, and the other team gets a short field because they probably throw a pick or something.
Or opposite that, if we lose the toss, Brent's going to say we're still going to kick.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Before you guys leave us, do me a favor. Go to, if you're watching on YouTube, go to the comments, or if you're listening, jump over to our Instagram. It's at MWCF Breakdown, and wish B a happy birthday today. Do that in the comments, or go over to our Instagram.
Let's do it like this. Sorry. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
That's
hey,
right.
Guys, this has been a blast, but you know what they say, right?
The weekend is good,
but the midweek is always better.
And boom goes the dynamite.